Oh, hi there, person on YouTube. Now, this is a video about British history in Palestine. And I'm going to focus on the role of several British people, all men actually, who you might have heard of but not realise has something to do with Palestine. So I'm going to talk about somebody called Lord Shaftesbury, you might have heard of him, or if you know London, you might know Shaftesbury Avenue. I'm going to talk about Herbert Horatio Kitchener, you might have heard of him, or you might have heard of a kitchen. And I'm going to talk about somebody else called Bob. Now, Bob is a person who gave his name to an expression we have in the UK, which is Bob's your uncle. And that expression relates to Palestine, actually. So I'll tell you about that in the video. So that's what the video is about. I'm going to tell you 5 things I think you need to know about the British role in Palestine before World War II, so quite early history. Now, before we start, you might want to know who I am and if I'm the best person to make a video about British history in Palestine. Well, no, I'm not the best person, but then these guys probably weren't the best people to be involved either. But if you haven't been here before, well, hello, welcome to my channel. And I should say that I like, in all my videos, taking you around and showing you some places around the UK and the world. So I'm going to be showing you some places around central London here. But I've started this video in one of my favourite places in London. It's so beautiful here. And I'll tell you why I'm here at the end. But for now, I'd like to take you to Shaftesbury Avenue, which is named after somebody called Lord Shaftesbury. So let's go there now. Let's go. I mean, I'm going. Don't know what you're doing. So here we are on Shaftesbury Avenue. There is a sign over there that says it's Shaftesbury Avenue, but you probably can't read it. It's quite far away. But if you've been to London, you probably have been to Shaftesbury Avenue. It's a road with lots of theatres and things on. So look, there's the Harry Potter theatre show there. But it's named after somebody called Lord, or is the Earl actually, of Shaftesbury, who was a politician in the 1800s. So there's a picture of him on the screen. He looks a bit like he could be in Harry Potter. He's wearing a cape. Now, Lord Shaftesbury had a reputation for doing things that were quite good for people in England at the time, in the Victorian time period. So, for example, he stopped children being used as chimney sweeps. So in the Victorian period, they had lots of chimneys, and if your chimney was blocked, you would use a child to unblock it, like a pipe cleaner, but it was a child. So he stopped that. However, he did things that weren't so good for people in Palestine. So he was writing a lot about Palestine, and he wrote in 1839, and I quote, "The soil and climate of Palestine are singularly adapted to the growth of produce required for Great Britain." And he gave examples. He said, for example, they have the finest cotton, and olive oil is now, as it ever was, the very fatness of the land. Now, I don't know how you feel about that quote, but the Earl of Shaftesbury was very influential in how British people started to think about Palestine. So he didn't use the exact wording, but he certainly started to give this idea that Palestine was a land without a people. And he proposed resettling Jewish people there. He was kind of what's known as a Christian Zionist. And this is the first thing I think you need to know, really, which is that British politicians have been involved in Palestine for a really long time. And while it was sometimes couched as helping Jewish people, it also seems to be quite a lot about helping themselves to the things that Palestine had. Now, as we're walking along Shaftesbury Avenue, you might be able to see a cinema there, the Curzon. That's quite a small chain of cinemas. But they're actually the UK distributor for a Palestinian film called Palestine 36, which I'd really recommend you watch. It's on YouTube, actually, so you could go and watch that now if you'd like to. But if you are still here, I'm going to kind of take a dive off Shaftesbury Avenue and walk through Chinatown. I was here quite early on a bank holiday, so it's quite quiet actually. So it is a good time to see Chinatown. It's not normally very busy. Or there is less to see when everything's closed. So I want to take you now to somewhere called Cecil Court, which is one of my favourite little roads in London. It is named after the Cecil family because one member of that family bought the land in the 1600s and the family still has it today. But we'll come back to that family because they've got something to do with Palestine. But for now, the second thing I want to tell you about is the second thing I need to know, which is about maps. So Cecil Court is a road that's got loads of little shops, little bookshops, little kind of antique shops. But there's also some shops that have maps. And in 1881, several British men, all with moustaches actually, here are some pictures of them, went to map Western Palestine. The survey was published in 1881, I think. Now, as I mentioned, all of these men had moustaches, and 3 of them were military officers as well. The best known of them is Horatio Herbert Kitchener, who went on to become the poster boy for World War I. I have another video about him if you'd like to know more about him. Now, the idea of this survey, the survey of Western Palestine, was that they were going out there to kind of have a look at the topography, the mountains, the birds, and the archaeology of Palestine. But I don't know if anything strikes you as a bit suspicious about this mission, particularly because 3 of them were army officers. So to me, it's a bit like a group of cats going on a bird-watching holiday, or a group of Catholic priests going on a trip to Disneyland. Now, that said, there were some genuinely quite interesting things to come out of this survey of Western Palestine. So, for example, Henry Baker Tristram, who was a clergyman, he genuinely did some really good work bird-watching, like literally bird-watching. And this is his image of the Palestinian sunbird. And the sunbird was made the national bird of Palestine in 1915. However, overall, there are some really big questions about this mission, particularly because the maps that they drew were used as the basis for military operations. So, for example, the British used poison gas against Palestine in 1917 and went on to occupy Palestine. But for now, this is the second thing I think you need to know, which is in the late 1800s, some men with moustaches went out to map Palestine. And if you want to know more about these maps, you can watch this really excellent video here by Dr. Salman Abu Sitter. You can go and watch that now. If you're still here, come around the corner with me and I want to show you a pub. Now, I mentioned the Cecil family who owned Cecil Court, that other road. Their coat of arms is actually above this pub. And the pub is named after a member of their family, which is Robert Arthur Talbot Gascoigne Cecil, the 3rd Marquis of Salisbury, who was later known just as Lord Salisbury and also known as Bob, because Bob is short for Robert. Now, in England, we have an expression which is Bob's your uncle. And Bob's your uncle just means that, easy peasy, just like that. But for somebody whose name was Arthur Balfour, Bob's your uncle was literal. Bob was literally his uncle. And because Arthur Balfour was the nephew to Bob, things were a bit easy for Arthur Balfour because he got given what was seen as a really good job. He was given the job Chief Secretary to Ireland in 1874. This was quite a major role, and in this role, Arthur Balfour got the kind of experience you needed to become Prime Minister. What kind of experience is that? Well, he got experience terrorising Irish people. And in 1905, he became Prime Minister. And he passed some very important legislation in 1905, which was the Aliens Act. This was an act of Parliament that really halted immigration. And it was particularly aimed at Jewish people trying to flee persecution across Europe and Russia. But he's best known for his role in 1917 for the Balfour Declaration. So I feel you might know this already, that the Balfour Declaration was when Arthur Balfour declared that Palestine would be a national home for the Jewish people. So there's so much more to be said about the Balfour Declaration. I've got another video about it. You can watch if you want to, click here. But this is the third thing I think you need to know really, which is that Arthur Balfour got his first job because he had an uncle called Bob. And he went on to declare the Balfour Declaration, which you could argue is to help Jewish people. Then you could argue, if you wanted to help Jewish people, why did he stop them migrating to the UK in 1905? Anyway, many more questions here. By the way, this is nothing against the actual pub. It's a really nice pub, being there with my mum. But let's move away from the pub now, and I want to take you somewhere else and tell you the fourth thing I think you need to know. And I want to show you this road here, which is Charing Cross Road. Now, Charing Cross Road is really well known for having loads and loads of bookshops. Let's go into a bookshop. Now, on the shelf of this bookshop, you can see the books of a very prolific author by the name of Winston Churchill. Now, Winston Churchill is best known for being Prime Minister during World War II. But he did quite a lot of other stuff as well. I've got another video about him, actually, if you'd like to watch that. But I want to focus on the role that he had in 1921, when he was Secretary of State to the colonies. Now, in theory, Palestine wasn't supposed to be a colony of Britain. But Winston Churchill and other leaders applied some of the same tactics that were used across the British Empire. So, for example, Winston Churchill sent over to Palestine a paramilitary unit called the Black and Tans. Now, the Black and Tans had just come back from Ireland, where they gained the kind of experience that I suppose Winston Churchill thought they needed to work in Palestine. And that experience was terrorising Irish people. Now, to give you an idea of what this paramilitary unit was like, what their tactics were like, there's one guy who was in this unit in Ireland and in Palestine by the name of Douglas Duff. Now, in England, we have an expression, which is to duff someone up, which means to beat them up. But I've heard it said that to duff someone up, this term came from Douglas Duff, because he had such a reputation for duffing people up, beating people up. Now, perhaps it's apt that we are in a bookshop, because Douglas Duff had a real change of career after coming back from Palestine. Do you know what he did? He became a children's author. Now, I didn't look out for any of Douglas Duff's books in that bookshop. I don't think there were any. But that's the fourth thing I think you need to know, really, which is that the British had a really violent presence in Palestine from the 1920s. And this involved paramilitary units in the army doing things like collectively punishing whole villages, just randomly shooting people and blowing up people in their homes. And all of these things were happening before the Israeli Defence Force were even founded. So let's leave the bookshop now. Thanks very much. Thank you. And walk back to where I started. And I want to tell you the fifth thing I think you need to know, really. So the fifth thing I think you need to know is there are loads more things to know about the British role in Palestine. I've just focused on some things that happened before World War II and the role of some men. I should say, by the way, not all British men were doing this. And if you do look in like the House of Commons records, you'll find lots of other politicians questioning why it was that the British were so involved in evicting and blowing up Palestinian homes. But I made this video because I didn't know that Britain really had a role in Palestine. I didn't learn about any of this in school. So this is just some things you need to know. Now, something else that you don't really need to know, but maybe want to know, is where I started filming this video and why. So let's go back there now. Now, I am there outside a really special place in London, just around the corner from Shaftesbury Avenue, which is called Phoenix Community Garden. So that is the building they've got there. It's a really lovely building. It says Phoenix at the top, designed by the architect Gurmeet Shan. I hope I pronounced that right. And now I'd like to take you inside. I said I'd like to take you inside. It was actually closed when I went. It gets very, very busy, so I thought I'd go early when it would be quieter. And I guess it was quiet in that it was closed. But do go and visit the Phoenix Community Garden if you get a chance. It's a very, very special place. So we'll end this video and leave you at the Phoenix Community Gardens, or the outside of the Phoenix Community Gardens. And the reason I thought I'd end there is because it's on the site of an old car park in the 1980s. And before it was a car park, it was a World War II bomb site. And I thought I'd end this video by telling you how British rule in Palestine did end. And it did involve bombing. So in 1946, the British HQ in Palestine, the King David Hotel, was blown up, a large part of it was blown up, by a Jewish terrorist group called the Irgun. This was the largest terrorist attack against Britain. In fact, the person that planned this attack was one of the early leaders of the newly created Israeli state. And of course, Palestine was never recognised as a state at this time period. And this coincided with the Nakba, when at least 750,000 Palestinian people were evicted from their homes and worse. So how did Britain respond to this? How did we respond to what was happening? Well, we just kind of vanished, really. Left. So it's time for me to leave now. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope it's been useful. I'll see you later. I mean, I can't see you, but